Hey guys, welcome back. It's Neon, and today I have a very special guest. I have Matt Moylan from UDON Entertainment. He's going to be joining us talking about, well, UDON Entertainment in the comic book industry and all the exciting things they're doing over there. Hello, Matt.
Yo, thanks for having me.
Yeah, hey, it's good to have you. Why don't you, for those of you who aren't familiar with UDON Entertainment, why don't you talk a little bit about UDON and how you came to be with the company and what it is that you guys publish?
Sure, we do so much stuff. Oh my gosh! But I'm director of publishing at UDON Entertainment. A lot of people most know us for the Street Fighter comics, if you're a comic book or direct market type of a fan. But we do so much more stuff now. We do art books. We do manga translated from Japan. A lot of our art books are also translated from Japan, but some of them are original art books that we produce ourselves. We also have, for almost 20 years, been a creative services company doing artwork for everybody else. So it might be toys, might be other people's comic books, Marvel comics, whatever. We've done movie concept art, video game concept art, in-game art, all kinds of stuff.
Now, you guys handled the artwork for the Street Fighter HD remix, didn't you?
Yeah, that must be about 10 years ago itself too. That was one of the biggest projects ever because it was redrawing every single sprite, and even in a simple game, I think there was about a couple hundred per character, and redrawing all the backgrounds. One guy did all the backgrounds.
Oh my god.
Omar Dogan.
Wow.
We also did and redid all the game endings, did all the character headshots, everything. It's like it was a total reskin of a whole game.
It was cool though. It was a really, I mean, you guys did a good job. You did a real good job.
Yeah, it ran into some problems where, in terms of the sprites, Udon was more of a keyframe and quality control rather than drawing every single sprite. And the guys that we were initially hooked up with to do the sprites just couldn't handle it because they were animation people, like regular animation people, and they understand how to animate A to B to C to D, not A has to go to B and also work with A to C and A to D and then back again. Because it's sprite, right? So
yeah, it's got to be, give the illusion of being seamless, but yeah.
And it was also kind of fitting because the hitboxes for the game couldn't change, like the way the game operated couldn't change. So it was fitting kind of a newer, more Street Fighter Alpha style into the old sprite boxes, which some of the characters were a little weird in Street Fighter 2. Like Bison is much skinnier in Street Fighter 2 than the standard M Bison has been in other games. He's
right.
Here, so there's a lot of interesting challenges with that. Longbow headed up most of the sprites for that.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I remember when Alpha came out, and they did the more anime style sprites. I was like, why is Bison so thick? Why is he so big now? Yeah, this is supposed to be a prequel. I'm like, did he get really old or what happened? So just I guess a limitation of the technology at the time or whatever. But yeah, we've been talking back and forth on Twitter about the comic book industry, and I think you and I seem to share a lot of the same opinions on kind of the state of comics right now, which is, I think it's kind of like it was the best at times, it was the worst at times. It's like right now it seems like there are so many exciting new options, for indie creators especially to break into comics, but it seems like the comic book industry itself, especially the direct market, is really kind of in a downward spiral. So how does UDON handle that? Because we're seeing shops close at an alarming rate. We're seeing other publishers kind of hold on by their fingertips. How are you guys surviving?
Well, honestly, diversity, but the dictionary version of diversity, not the weird modern version of diversity, but having a lot of different products that are that speak to a different audience. Well, some of them are the same audience, but just for example, as I said, we do comic books, but we also do manga and we do art books. And really, where we do the best is with art books, mostly video game art books. We also do animation and anime stuff. Like we've got a Neon Genesis Evangelion art book coming out soon,
right.
Like that. But it's always, and at the same time, well, we're also a creative services company and a publisher. So in the past, that was one of the big things where one side of the business would get a little dry, the other one would compensate, and they'd go up and down. Sometimes they're both really good, but just having a lot of a lot of different products. So when one gets a little slow, it doesn't mean you have to stop doing it, but it's not going to kill the company. But as a company too, I think we're also very cautious.
Mm-hmm.
The Udon chief Eric Ko, like I'll always come to him, Eric, let's do these 5 things. Like, well, hold on, let's do one thing, and then we'll try the next thing after that. So doing stuff like that, or keeping on top of numbers. I know it's kind of boring, but I've seen more than one publisher go under because they got a ton of orders for their book in the book market, and then they just kept going on as normal, and then 6 months later, 3/4 of them get returned, and they're hit with a big return bill, and so they just can't handle it.
Yeah, it does seem like I almost feel like the situation, the comic book industry is now. This is just my armchair observation. I mean, I've worked as a freelancer in comics for a number of years for different publishers, and I work in marketing. That's kind of my day job. But I'm looking at it. It just seems like a lot of times, it seems like these companies sort of like throw caution to the wind. They're like, let's go all in on this, even though we don't know if this is going to sell, even though historically this hasn't sold, but this is where it's at. This is where we're going to go. This is where, because I was looking at the story we were going to cover too, is IDW starting this new publishing endeavor when, and I'm not trying to throw shade at IDW. I've actually worked for them before, and I don't really have any complaints about, the time I spent working there, but, the company is not in terribly good shape right now, and they're going to go start up a whole new publishing endeavor. I'm like, why don't you just fix what's not working at the main company,
Well, I can even, before I worked at Udon, I worked at Dreamwave Productions, which was the company doing the Transformers comics in the early 2000s, and we were a publisher. I got on right when they sort of separated from Image and became an independent publisher, and so for their whole 3-year run as a publisher, I was there, and they were so successful with Transformers that they just thought we're the biggest thing. And they went from they upgraded their office from a $2,000 rent a month office to a $20,000 rent office a month.
Oh my god!
And just started pumping out books. And after 3 years, the company was dead, and hugely in debt and went under.
Yeah, I remember hearing about. Now you don't have to comment on this. I actually tried out. For Dreamwave. And I sent my samples in like right before they shut their doors. And it was so weird because then I sent the same samples when I found out IDW had the license. I sent the same ones to IDW, and they're like, "Yeah, they're really good, but they look too much like Dreamwave stuff." Because then we don't want to do that.
Yeah, they really wanted to get away from the Dreamwave style for some reason. But
yeah,
in the end, at the end, they hired half of the Dreamwave people anyway.
Yeah, it was so weird. They're like, yeah, it looks too anime and it's too detailed. That's not what we're going for. And I didn't get it until I actually saw the books, come out, and I was like, oh man. So like literally, I could have spent half as much time working on these, and I probably would have got picked up. Anyway, but yeah, it just seems like there is, kind of throwing this caution to win sometime. And I mean, it's not as bad like maybe say in the '90s. Like you saw these, some of these Image guys with just like mad money, and they were just like. Just like burning $100 bills just because they could, and I think people just in any business, I think people just assume they're always going to be doing as well as they are this quarter, and people have weathered the storm, realize that like you gotta, you're going to have your ups and your downs, and you can't count on it always doing so well. And, comics.
Yeah, I just saw Dynamite was just announcing how the first issue of Vampirella sold. I think they got orders of 60,000 copies from retailers, and they're super happy. I mean, and that's great news for a mid-range publisher these days. But back 25 years ago, that was like, that's a disaster. You're canceled. 60,000 copies.
Yeah. It's so weird how what the threshold is for success now. Cause I remember, even back in the 80s, like, I worked primarily on licensed books, and most of the stuff I worked on, was Disney stuff. And so I used to read a lot of the Gladstone comics back in the 1980s, and even the Gladstones back then were considered kind of like fringe, another rainbow, and they were still selling 80 to 100,000 copies. And you could never find those books anywhere,
Yeah.
So, But like now, I'm seeing publishers out there that are moving like 1,000, 2,000 units, and somehow they stay in business. I don't understand how this works.
Well, I mean, for us doing the Street Fighter comics, it's got to be kind of a multi-tiered thing. So I mean, we publish the floppy comics, we do softcover trade paperbacks, hardcover collections, comicsology sales, foreign licensing. Sometimes we license the art out for other purposes, like we've done over the years, like for toys or card games, things like that.
Yeah,
so there's got to be a ton of ways to. You need a whole bunch of ways to make your money back off of the initial comic, really.
Right. Kind of reminds me of. I remember watching Gordon Ramsay, and he would like one of his shows. And I can't remember which one because he's got like 95 different shows right now. But one of his shows, he was telling people he put ingredients on the table, and he said, "How many dishes can you make out of this?" And everybody's like 1 or 2, and he's like, "Wrong! You can make like 4 or 5 dishes out of these like 3 ingredients with the and basically like maximize your profit off of the same amount of resources." And so that's a pretty smart move, and I think a lot of comics publishers aren't really doing that. I mean, it used to be that a lot of stuff would get reprinted or whatever. You'd see a lot of the artwork turn up on licensed products, and it's like, well, that was taken from X-Men, whatever, and they just threw it on some underwear, and it doesn't really seem like they do it as much as they used to.
For us, we can't just survive on the direct market either with comics.
Right.
We've especially been building up our online sales as well, like special edition covers and things like that for direct sales to the customer. But it's unfortunate too, because the direct market customers and really the retailers are the customers in the direct market. Those are like our favorite ones because the direct market is non-returnable. It's kind of, I don't know if you've ever talked about that on your show, how comic shops can't return things.
Yeah, we've kind of, I think a lot of just like casual comic book readers, I don't think they realize that. Like the comic shops are the ones, taking all the risk. If they choose wrong, it's like, Indiana Jones, they choose wrong, they get stuck with product they can't sell, which is how it winds up in the quarter bins.
Yeah, so it's kind of been, it's unfortunate. It's kind of a leftover from an old era that doesn't totally make sense anymore. Like, the reason it's like that is because back in the day, there was comic shops and there was the newsstand, the 2 places to get your floppy comics. And the newsstand, like a corner store or wherever, grocery store, if they didn't sell it, they would rip off all the covers and mail them so it wasn't sellable anymore, and just mail them back in a stack, just like magazines, just to get a refund. And comic shops couldn't do that, but they got the benefit of the comic. They'd get the comics, I think, 2 weeks earlier than the newsstand. So there was like a balance there. Now there's not really any other competitor for comic shops, and comic shops are also they're competing with bookstores and Amazon on trade paperbacks and things, and they mostly have the same deal where things are non-returnable on whatever product they're ordering from Diamond. So they do a lot of the time still get things early, even trade paperbacks, but they're kind of stuck, and nobody wants to budge because everybody's kind of surviving on the industry this way. Like the publishers and the Diamond, and so I don't know what's going to happen. I kind of feel it has to get worse before it gets better, like even more.
Yeah, it almost feels like, when the direct market came into existence, it was almost like, comics had reached sort of this, do or die moment. And I think that, I'm with you. I think that has to happen again for there to be any like meaningful change. Like Diamond has to be on the verge of bankruptcy or something, for it to change. But I do know some individual publishers are, taking returns now. I know Alterna, we've had Peter Smeddy on before. He's doing returns. I think Boom is doing returns now. So I think individual publishers are starting to realize that, like, they might have a better shot at selling the books if, the retailers will take a chance on it if they know they can send it back.
Yeah, and it's really also up to the publishers too to promote stuff so that the retailers don't get stuck with it.
Yeah.
Let people know why it's great, and also put out great products.
Yeah. Well, that's a huge thing. So who would you say is a typical UDON customer?
Well, like I said, because we have so many different things, it's usually someone who appreciates great artwork, someone who might be interested in Japanese culture, because a lot of our stuff is focused on Japanese properties, or even things like we do the Art of Darksiders books, which are all based around Joe Madureira's artwork, which is all he himself is all Japanese influence. So that's we usually call ourselves a boutique publisher. Like, we do a lot of stuff that a bigger publisher might not pick up on. Things that we know there's a small but very dedicated audience. Things like, for example, we brought over the Okami art book, which is a video game series from Japan, about at least 10 years ago now, and we reprint it every year because everybody who ever played Okami loves Okami. It's not the best-selling game ever, but everybody who ever played it loves it.
Does it have a watermark on the cover?
A watermark? Oh yeah.
I just have to ask. I know. Is that the variant cover?
No.
Like 5 people got that.
I think we have the artwork from that cover in the book, but that was a weird one.
It was IGN. I think it was the IGN watermark. It was on the cover.
So weird.
That's cool. You guys, I mean, I'm out here looking at your site. I know now. I actually do know some other folks who work for UDON, and you guys do seem to be pretty eclectic. Like, I know you were kind of getting into the book trade for a while. You're doing like Manga Classics Illustrated or something. I do remember that. And I'm looking now. More recently, it looks like you're publishing a couple of web comics too that are sort of manga inspired.
Yeah, that's something new we've taken on the last couple of years. We're publishing the Ménage à Trois series by Giselle Lagasse. Comic people might know her better from, she worked on Gem and the Holograms, Betty Boop, and a bunch of Archie stuff. She has a series at Image right now called Exorcisters.
Okay.
But her webcomic is very adult. It's basically the tone of an Archie comic, but what if everybody was also having sex with everybody else?
Yeah, I was gonna say, when you guys are doing Ménage à Trois, I was like, okay, yeah, I know that one. But yeah, no, she's really solid artist.
It's funny, actually. She came to us many years ago when she was starting out the comic, and like, I want to do my first collection. Would you guys publish it? At the time, we were really pushing a line called Manga for Kids. Which was aimed at really young kids. Like there's a series called Ninja Baseball about a kid who grew up in the woods, and he comes to a modern city and doesn't really understand things, and he plays baseball as if the coach is like a feudal lord,
right.
And things like that. But we're pushing this line of manga for kids, and like, I don't know if we want to pick up this mature readers, sex romp comic right now. And she's like, oh, okay, that's cool. And she ended up publishing the initial volumes herself, and after a few volumes, she started doing crowdfunders, and she's done really well for herself. And then we've stayed like in touch over the years, and she wanted to bring the books to a bigger market, and we thought, oh well, you've really proven yourself, and we'd love to do that. Actually, help you do that.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. Like, a lot of people I know with crowdfunding, and I back campaigns where kind of, I guess, the scope changes, where you back it thinking the people are going to do it themselves, and then next thing you know, they've announced they got a publishing deal someplace, and the book is coming out from a publisher. This happened with some tabletop games too. I know. I think it was a 5 Minute Dungeon wound up going through Spin Master, and like, the backers get all kind of upset because the person's like doing it through a company. They might have to wait longer or whatever, but I mean, really, it's great for the creators because they have an opportunity to reach that larger audience.
Yeah, well, I think Giselle does still self-publish the smaller individual sized like volumes, like she always has, and we do these big thick omnibuses that are available in bookstores and stuff. But I think for her, it's just, I've got an extra source of income where I don't have to do anything. Just, here's all the files, guys. Go take care of it for me. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and I don't think people realize, how much goes into it. And, I mean, I think sometimes with a publisher, like, people are like, well, I'd rather keep all the money for myself. And I'm like, well, yeah, but you're going to have to do all the work yourself too. So,
Yeah.
if you want that, then by all means, do it. But, where do you see, like, talking about like Giselle and other independent creators, I mean, there really has been an uptick in independent comics, in the last couple of years, especially. I mean, Kickstarter's been a thing, but it just seems like, the last like 2 years, things have just absolutely exploded, in independent publishing for indie creators versus, then we're looking at the direct market, which is kind of, on the downward spiral. Do you think that like those two are related? Do you think that maybe like, and I'm not going to put you in a bad place here, Matt, and if you don't want to answer, feel free to just say pass. But do you think maybe, dollars that would normally be spent in the direct market are being spent in the crowdfunding space? Can these two coexist or what?
I don't. They're very different right now. Like a comic book, like a floppy comic book in a comic shop might be $3, $4, or $5. It might be like a 22-page story, and crowdfunder type people are generally doing like, maybe we'll do a 40-page story, but it's going to be like $20, $30, and people are a certain amount of people are very willing to pay premium prices like that for a great product that just wouldn't exist. Like, it wouldn't be able to sell it. It wouldn't be able to financially support itself if it was only a $4 comic where the person actually producing it only gets like $1.60 out of that $4
right.
Between the distributor and the comic shop and things. But yeah, we're in a good time where there are a lot of people. There are more and more people every day who are eager to directly support creators. I think that's a big part of it. But yeah, there's a. I don't know if it's a change going on. It's just there's something new growing while something else is getting smaller. Kind of.
Yeah, and it seems like the two actually could coexist pretty well. Like I said, about some of the campaigns we've backed, we've had people where we've backed their comic, and it turned out they got picked up by like Dark Horse or Image or something like that, and then they were able to both hit the crowdfunding market and then hit the the direct market too, or the book market. And I'm trying to think, what was it? Check Please got picked up by First Second. After they did a couple $100,000 on Kickstarter. So, I mean, it seems like the two can coexist fairly well, at least from where I'm sitting. And you would think with a crowdfunded book, especially a book that does, a ton of money on Kickstarter or Indiegogo, that would be a great sort of like, test marketing for a publisher or for a comic shop retailer to be like, well, a lot of people clearly like this product, maybe I should take a chance on it.
Yeah, well, UDON is actually looking into just that kind of stuff. Well, I wouldn't say looking, like we've actually really planning to do some of this stuff. Like crowdfunding is going to be a part of our future. Probably not too far away. Because we've found like we tried launching a comic series recently that just didn't get the orders. We didn't even want to. Decided not to publish it. I won't exactly say what it is, but we decided not to publish it. We're gonna bring it back as a crowdfunder at some point and try it that way initially, and then bring it back to book market and comic stores after, just to give it a good start. But the publishers definitely have to look at different ways of doing things if you're in terms of comic books.
Yeah, because it seems like, I mean, even like I remember Archie. I mean, they kind of came under fire a couple of years ago for doing a crowdfunding campaign, and really. I remember now, and we talked about this before, my wife and I talked about this, where, we remember when Kickstarter first began and a lot of the mainstream publishers, really looked down their noses at the idea of crowdfunding. They called it e-begging. They said that, if nobody will pick up your book, then your book mustn't be worth publishing. If you don't have the money for it yourself, why should people just give you money? Yada, yada, all these excuses. And then like a couple of years later, Fantagraphics is doing it. Archie's doing it. It seems more and more of the books that are being crowdfunded are going to like Image or Dark Horse or something like that. So, personally, I don't think it's out of the norm for a crowdfunded book to ultimately find a home, with an established publisher.
Yeah, for sure, attitudes have changed about crowdfunding. It's changed from a way specifically to help people who just who needed help to get a project going, to basically a legitimate online sales channel for anyone, really. Just another type of online sales channel.
So that's pretty cool. So, tell you what, why don't you throw some topics out here you want to talk about? Is there anything really exciting going on with Udon right now, or the industry that you really want to talk about?
Well, right now we're in the. If I want to tell you what we've got going on for our comics, we're in the middle of a series of Street Fighter one-shots. This is another way to, rather than do a mini series, we did 5 one-shots by different artists about different Street Fighter characters.
Okay, I'm pulling up. Was it Necro #1? Is that one of the one-shots?
Sure, that's coming up. For the 2 that we've done are already out. I guess 3 really. The first 2 were Street Fighter Minot, which is one of the new Street Fighter 5 characters. Introducing her to our Street Fighter universe. She's kind of an Egyptian fortune teller.
Okay.
We did Street Fighter WrestlePalooza, which was super fun. It was focusing on a bunch of the wrestling characters, and even Mike Hagar from the Final Fight series.
Oh, cool.
So that was super fun. And we did a free comic book day one shot with Sakura and Corinne. Okay. And yeah, the next one coming up is Necro and Effie, which are very obscure Street Fighter characters.
Freaking love Necro. I love Necro. Like, he does not get enough love. I think he belongs in Darkstalkers, but
yeah, kinda.
I freaking
He's like
love
a living science experiment, stretchy dude. And his girlfriend Effie, who's kind of like, she's got the personality of like Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
But in our version, we've decided she's also kind of got super strength. So we know in the game she's experimented on as like Necro, but it's not very clear what her powers are. So we decided to give her like super strength. So this cool. little tiny girl that can smash cars and things.
That's cool.
And the last one of this batch that we got coming up in July is called Akuma versus Hell.
Hell? Like all of Hell? Like
well in the Street Fighter universe, Hell is the Makai, which is the dimension that the Darkstalkers are from, at least in our comic universe. So at the end of we did a crossover between Street Fighter and Darkstalkers a couple years ago, and at the end Akuma decided to stay in the Darkstalkers dimension to train. So this is like a one shot of just Akuma fighting, zombies and squid monsters and giant volcano titans and things like that.
Oh, that's cool. So how closely do you guys work with Capcom? Do they just let you like run with this stuff, or do they have like certain guidelines?
It changes a lot. I mean, we've been doing Street Fighter since 2005. I think was when the first UDON Street Fighter comic came out, and there have been so many regime changes and shakeups at Capcom. So it's different every couple of years.
Yeah,
how things work. But generally, they let us pretty well run with things. Once in a while, they'll say like that's too far from the property. We at one point wanted to have Guile lose an arm so that he has to do his sonic boom with one arm, just like his buddy Charlie does. Yeah, he has to learn to do it with one arm. And they said, it's really, I don't know, it's a Japanese culture thing. It's really taboo to have what would they say? Basically, a crippled person fighting. I was like, that's icky to us.
Oh, jeez. What was that? Oro from Street Fighter 3, the dude with either his one arm's tied behind his back or he's missing it.
Oh yeah, well that's the thing. They told us actually Oro was originally supposed to only have one arm, and they decided against it for that reason. So they decided he has an arm tied behind his back.
Oh yeah, because when I first played Street Fighter 3, I always thought he just had one arm. I'm like, why is this old man wearing a potato sack and where's his other arm? Like, what the frick are they? Like, what are they doing with Street Fighter? I remember the first time I played, I'm just like, I get that they're trying to have all new characters, but I'm like, man, some of these characters are weird. But I love Necro. I've always loved Necro. I just thought he was very cool.
Cool. But yeah, it's they don't dictate much to us. It's usually just us bringing ideas to them, and usually they think that they're cool and let us try it out.
Huh. So do you have, so is this like specific like license, because I see you do some Mega Man stuff too. Like, any plans for like, Breath of Fire or something like that? That'd be freaking awesome.
I mean, we could in the future. We've done a Breath of Fire art book.
Okay.
That went over really well. It was a localization of the Japanese edition.
Mm-hmm.
The Mega Man stuff we do is not actually original 100%. It's colorized manga.
Okay.
Yeah, we published the manga several years ago by Hitoshi Ariga, and we just wanted to, with Archie dropping the Mega Man comic license, we saw there's still like a lot of people who want more Mega Man stuff, but they just never read the manga because either they don't read manga or they don't like black and white. So yeah, we worked with the manga creator, and he was sort of the art director for us coloring the manga pages, and we reformatted it into like a comic book shape, like a standard American comic shape, and released them that way, just to try to give something back to that audience.
That's how I remember reading Battle Angel Alita. I think it was Dark Horse did the was Dark Horse or Viz did an actually comic book format back in the 90s, and that's kind of how I read. But it seems like manga's coming back like in full force, isn't it? Like
manga's been growing pretty well the last several years. There was a big manga like bubble burst in the mid 2000s because everybody would just grab anything they could that was manga. Just it's got big eyes and speed lines. I'm gonna license it, put it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after that, the remaining manga publishers, you had to only pick titles that basically the industry self-curated itself. So you could only pick the best titles. So for several years, if it was coming out and it was manga, it was probably pretty good. And I think now the industry is still growing. I think that attitude has luckily stayed around to like we've got to pick the best stuff to bring over here.
Yeah, which I think is a good. That's I did a video the other day, and I'm concerned about. I got to tell you, I'm concerned about Netflix and their appetite for anime, because it seems like a lot of the stuff that they're producing in house is sort of following the same pattern that they had with manga in the mid 2000s, where it was anything that looked even remotely manga-esque was suddenly manga, and it seems like a lot of these shows that are sort of being pushed as anime are not actually anime. It's just an American action cartoon that might have big eyes, and so that's kind of a concern I've got, because I've seen some projects announced. I'm kind of like, guys, just bring it over from Japan. How hard is that? It saves you money too. You don't have to But if it's gonna be anime inspired, at least be upfront with the audience and say this is not actually anime. This is Western production, but kind of like Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's for all intents and purposes it's basically anime, but it was clearly done in the West. So
everybody's standard is going to be different. I'm
right.
very of the if it for manga, say if it's not. Doesn't have a strong connection with Japan, like either a publisher or the creators or something involved in the production, then it's not really manga.
Right. Well, I'm the same way. Like, I'm not to be a snob or anything, but there's a certain flavor there, and I don't think it can be. I mean, you can be heavily inspired by, but to actually call it, actual manga, actual anime is, I think, reaching. Like you said, if it's just big eyes and speed lines,
Yeah, I consider it a made in Japan sticker.
Right.
What it should.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And we're going to get all kinds of comments, and people are going to say you're wrong. But no, you've got some really cool stuff coming up, and it looks like. I mean, I do like the fact that you guys are diversifying and you know your audience really well. So
yeah, we're trying out some original manga too, because original in that we have usually stuck to video game and anime tie-ins. It did have an anime. We did a series called Otherworldly Izakaya Nobu, and it's still ongoing. Which, but it's not. It's not our typical type of thing. It's not battles and fights and things. It's this one's about a time traveling Japanese pub that like a modern pub that exists in like medieval Germany, basically. And so they're introducing people to Japanese food. So it's all about food. So we did that, and we've got coming up in August a series called Stravaganza, which is basically like Lord of the Rings crossed with Attack on Titan. A really cool War of the Races book. It's gorgeous. I keep saying I can't believe that nobody else picked this up. It's been out for a few years, and we just found out about it. Nobody ever licensed it.
Yeah, awesome. I'm looking at it right now. I have it pulled up right now. It's very detailed art. The cover's amazing.
Yeah, the subtitle for it is the Queen in the Iron Mask. The main character is the Queen of the Humans, and it's just tradition that the Queen always wears like a knight's helmet, so nobody really knows what she looks like. And she sneaks out on the side and is this warrior woman who just helps people. This like Xeno-like person who helps people, or gets into trouble, or all kinds of things.
Okay, that's actually a pretty cool concept. I might have to check this one out. Yeah, we have a lot of our viewers now. They're basically saying that they're kind of giving up on the mainstream American comic book industry, and they're moving more into crowdfunded projects and manga. That seems to be where everybody's going. Which is kind of sad in one way, but again, it's like it is the times are kind of changing, tastes are changing, and it just kind of says to me that the products that people are looking for are not being presented in the mainstream comic book market now.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. There's not really like one thing that you can point to, like this is why it happened.
Right.
I mean, there was the big companies just relentlessly pushing events and crossovers for a long time. There's the whole variant cover debate, which we do too. We do tons of variant covers because there are some people that buy all of them. They want to have every cover, and if that's what we need to support the book, that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
And then there's also the matter of, for whatever reason, people trying to chase new audiences at the sort of expense of losing your existing audience, and it not working out.
Yeah.
that new audience just wasn't there, or they're really just not interested in this genre, or what. But unfortunately, a lot of old people have kind of been alienated the last few years.
Yeah, and it's I mean, again, I'm with you. I don't blame any one thing. I know you have a lot of people that are sort of like it's this or it's that. I mean, I think the price is obviously the fact that it's hard to track down comic book shops now. It seems like they're closing every month. And again, like you said, like I firmly believe comics are for everybody, but you can't grow an audience at the expense of your existing audiences. It's not just comics. Like we see so many businesses do this where it becomes an either or thing. I'm like, why can't you keep the existing audience happy while also chasing a new audience? And I know you're really big in the Transformers. So Transformers, perfect example. When the movies came out, a lot of Transformers fans did not like the movie designs. I think Hasbro was pretty smart in that they brought the classics line out in tangent with the movie line. So it's like, well, if you don't like these, don't worry, we got you covered. We got like a G1 style Optimus Prime, for you guys. We got the Alternators and all this other stuff, which is pretty cool. They did that, and I think they still kind of do that now, where they never truly ditch the G1 aesthetic because they know that's their bread and butter. Like that's what the collectors want.
Yeah, they figured it out a few years ago. It used to be they'd come out with a new line like this is for kids, it's aimed at kids, but now they realized, well, we can aim it at kids, but then we just put a little bit of G1 flavor in it for the older fans, and they'll like it too.
Yeah, and it's just smart business. It's like, who's got the money? I mean, because a lot of these collectibles now, and comics, let's face it, comics are basically collectibles. That people have to have money to collect, and who's got the money? The adults with the jobs. A lot of times, I mean, they're buying for kids, but I mean, so many comics now are so. I mean, geez, I dipped out of monthly comics when they hit $4 because I'm like, I can't afford it. I'll just pick up the trade. It's too much, and that's what I like about what Alterna is doing with the $1.50 comics. But if you're going to charge a premium price, then you're going to be targeting a different audience than just a casual fan that's going to pick something up for a couple bucks at Walmart.
Yeah.
So, but no, this is really cool. This is really exciting. Is there anything else you want to talk about in regards to the comic book industry? I mean, you guys said you're doing more with. I know you probably can't talk about it with crowdfunding, but do you see yourselves bringing on maybe more independent creators, or are these for like established products or projects, or?
Well, it also has to be something that we're interested in. So we have actually turned down projects where I'm pretty sure this would make money, but I don't know anything about this video game. And
right.
It doesn't look like I'd ever play it. Any of us would ever play it. So let's not do this one. So like Menage a Trois was something that as a series that I read anyway. Mm-hmm. And we're also doing some of her spin-off titles coming up. Like we've got Sandra on the Rocks is a less adult but still sort of fun romantic comedy romp thing. That's a spin-off to Menage a Trois. So we're publishing that series. We're publishing the Sticky Dilly Bun series, which is just like Menage a Trois, but they kind of tried to flip it on their head and aim towards the opposite. It's hard to say opposite gender, but opposite interest audience. So
gotcha.
Yeah. So instead of where Menage a Trois has the main characters are a nerdy guy and a bisexual girl and a super hot blonde girl. This series is the main characters are a geeky girl and a gay guy and the porn star sister of the geeky girl. So it's a different group, just a different angle, I guess.
with there's a joke in there somewhere with the best worst name ever for a book with that kind of content.
Oh my gosh, Sticky Dilly Buns! I was in a meeting with our distributor, like a phone call, and they kept asking me to say it. What was that again? I didn't get it, and they heard me the first time. We just
want to hear you say it about 5 times. No, but it looks like you guys have a lot going on here, and it's good to see more companies diversify. Like I said, the only other company I can think of maybe that diversifies as much as UDON right now is Dark Horse. Like I can't remember the last time I picked up a Dark Horse comic. It's all like their art books, like the Zelda, the Hyrule book and the He-Man mini comics books and stuff like that, kind of the general pop culture stuff.
Yeah, our Dark Horse has really gotten into art books over the last several years. They tend to stick to AAA games, like you said, like your Zelda or your Horizon Zero Dawn or things like that. Then UDON once in a while we'll get some AAA licenses. Like we have a Gears of War retrospective coming up. But we also do a lot of the mid-range titles, like I was saying. Like we'll do like a Professor Layton, which has got a pretty big audience, but it's not necessarily huge. So just like I said, stuff that we think is great.
So, any dream projects? Like if you could get one license, what would it be?
Oh, I don't think we ever will now. We were in talks to at one point, but I'd love to do Gargoyles.
Oh,
Disney Gargoyles.
Seriously? Oh,
yeah, so we were talking with Disney about it after slave labor stopped doing Disney comics. They had Gargoyles. They had a couple other things. I forget what else they had.
Haunted Mansion, I think, was one of them, and yeah.
Yeah, so we were talking with Disney, and then the whole Marvel buying Disney thing happened, and they were like, "Stop everything! Stop all licensing. We've got to figure everything out before anything happens."
Yeah.
Yeah, so everyone figured that Marvel would just publish every Disney-related comic, but actually it's turned out not to be. They've kind of spread it out in the end to different publishers.
Yeah, I think this is just my armchair observation, right? And I spent most of my career working on Disney books and in some capacity, and I think they're not. Like I've actually said before, and this is just pure speculation on my part, knowing how Disney works, that I would not be surprised if the day comes where even the Marvel books are licensed out, because the profit margins in comic books, are not what Disney's accustomed to. Disney basically likes to just print money,
Right.
And if they can put that on a publisher, and the publisher has to pay them for the honor of helping them print that money, there's no loss in it for Disney. So I mean, we kind of see it with IDW now, where they're doing the Marvel books, and they're spreading it out to Dark Horse and stuff. So maybe you can get that Gargoyles license. Guys, try again.
We'll try.
I don't think it's going to Marvel.
We have a pretty good history with Marvel, and we have worked with Disney on things too. I mean, UDON started. UDON's very first project was doing X-Men Evolution mini comics for Burger King kids meals.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Let's go. That was a good show. Dang it, that was a really good show. I think that might actually be my favorite animated X-Men, even over the original, the Fox Kids one. I liked Evolution quite a bit. So, all right. Any parting thoughts there, Matt?
Just check out UDON on all our socials and our website. Just look up UDON Entertainment or UDON Ent. Well, they're all pretty much that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, overall, it's like we've talked about a whole bunch of stuff that's rough about the industry, but UDON's actually doing really good this year.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And again, I think knowing your audience is a big part of that, right? And diversifying.
Yeah.
Okay, so cool. I'm going to put a link to your website in the description for the video, and I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, great. Thanks. It was a fun talk.
Okay. Thanks so much, Matt.
No problem.
Hey guys, thanks for watching Clownfish TV. Please consider supporting the channel. Go to clownfishsupport.com. That's clownfishsupport.com. And if you want to join our community, go to clownfishtalk.com. That's clownfishtalk.com. Please subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. We will talk to you next time.